Today we're looking at the first 25 things you should do if you've just got your new iPad. Now these tips, tricks, as well as settings changes will unlock new features, save battery life, improve performance, and make your experience using your iPad even better. Now I'll be demonstrating this on my M4 iPad Pro, however this video also applies to the iPad Air, iPad Mini, and iPad. Basically all iPads. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so to start I want to show you some really neat tips and tricks regarding the keyboard. So let's go ahead and open up a notes document here. And as you can see, if I open up a blank sheet of notes here, the keyboard takes up a lot of your screen space, right? Roughly a quarter in portrait mode, and then in landscape mode, even more, nearly half of the screen space here will be taken up just by the keyboard. But there is actually a way to resize it. So what you can do is do an outwards pinch motion. So take 2 fingers and pinch like so, and we go and do that on top of the keyboard. You'll see that shrinks the keyboard and gives you an almost iPhone-sized keyboard, which makes it much smaller and takes up much less screen space. What is also neat is you can use this bar here to drag the keyboard around. You can place it anywhere on the screen that you like. So for example, you can say if you're holding your iPad up with one hand, you can quickly use one thumb to type without obstructing so much of your screen space. This works really well, both in portrait mode and of course also in landscape mode. And then if you want to resize the keyboard back to its original size, simply repeat the gesture, but just reverse it. So instead of pinching outwards, we're going to pinch inwards. And as you can see, the keyboard will now expand again. Great, so next I want to show you another neat keyboard trick, and that is a quicker way to type out numbers. So normally speaking, you'll see that currently here we have the alphabet, we have your letters view here, and you have to tap on the secondary menu to access your numbers, and this works, but if you just want to type 1 or 2 numbers quickly, a more efficient way to do so is to actually swipe down on the lettered key. So for example, let's take a look here at Y. You'll see that we have a 6 above it. All you have to do is swipe down like so, and as you can see, that's going to type out a number. Here again, R4, E3, and then I8, and it's going to type out those numbers much more quickly without having to first go to that secondary menu and go back to your lettered key. Now this doesn't just apply to the numbers in the top row, but also to special characters seen below here. So for example, the @ symbol with the A, simply swipe down there. You have things like the percentage sign with the Z, so much quicker way to get those keys. And finally, the last keyboard trick I want to show you is a more efficient way to move your cursor. So of course, you can tap around the screen to position this, but sometimes it can be hard to position this as precisely as you like. So what you can also do is press and hold on the space bar, and you can see then essentially works as a trackpad to move it across the screen. And what is also neat is that this will also work on your iPhone, so making it much easier to position the cursor if say you have a large body of text or you want to put it in a very specific place. Alright, so now I want to show you some really essential gestures on the iPad. And I think knowing the essential gestures are going to ultimately help you get more done in less time and make you more productive when using your iPad. So first of all, to of course close an application, you just want to swipe down from the bottom of the display. But an alternative way to do so is to use a 5-finger pinch. So you take 5 fingers and then zoom outwards like so, and that's then also going to close the app, but in a more efficient way. What is also cool, or I think even cooler, is to use a 4-finger swipe to the left or right. So let's say I'm in Safari here. I take 4 fingers, now I swipe to the left to cycle between my most recent open apps. And you can see this works both ways. I can swipe left and right, and this makes it really easy to say quickly switch between 2 applications that you have open. And an alternative way to do this is to swipe along the bottom here where you have that bar to go home. You can swipe to the left and right there with just 1 finger. And what is really cool is that that specific gesture also works on the iPhone. So I actually use this very often, both on my phone as well as here on the iPad, making it super easy to quickly cycle between 2 apps without having to first go to the app viewer or the app switcher to switch between them. No, instead just simply swipe, much more efficient. And speaking of the app switcher, let's say ever you have an application that is acting up, say it is running a bit slowly or glitching, what you can do is open up the app switcher here, and then you want to simply find the application and swipe up to close it, and that's then going to restart the application to hopefully resolve any issues you may have. And then here on the home screen, a couple gestures here. The first will be to swipe down from the center top of the display. That's going to bring up your notification view, and then swipe up again to dismiss that. And if we swipe down from the top right, this is going to bring up your control center, giving you easy access to control some core functions here on your iPad. You can also press and hold on certain toggles to give you more precise control. For example, here, the timer, I find that particularly useful as it will allow you to immediately set a timer here right from your control center. But we'll take a closer look at this later, as there are some settings and tricks that I want to show you when it comes to customizing the control center, but we'll get back to that in a sec. First, I want to show you how to multitask on your iPad. Now, running multiple apps at once, I think is such a great feature on the iPad. It makes it feel and run much more like a proper computer as opposed to just a large phone. So there's a couple ways to do this. The first is called split screen, and the second is called slide over. I'm going to show you each of them. So let's start off with split screen. So you can see here, I'm browsing on a web page here in Safari, and what we can do is tap on the 3-dot menu in the top center of the display, and then we're going to tap on split view. That's going to move the Safari window off to the side and then prompt us to open a second application to use use alongside it. So let's say while I'm browsing the web, I want to take some notes. So I tap on the Notes app here, and as you can see, we are now going to be running two applications here at once. So I got the Safari window on the left, and then we have the Notes application here on the right, and I can scroll and browse between them like so. Another great thing is that I can also resize them. So you have this little bar here in the middle, and I can drag that to the left to allocate more screen space to the Notes document, and I can also move it here to the right to give more screen space to the Safari window. And if I want to close either application, you get to tap on the same three-dot menu, and in this case here, we'll tap on close, and that's then going to full screen the Safari window once more. Now, an even quicker way to bring up a second application here in split view is instead of swiping home, you do a sort of shorter swipe. That's then going to bring up your dock, and that's going to allow you to then click and drag, or rather tap and drag, a second application off to the side here and pull that up again in the split view mode. Now, it's a little bit of a different gesture. You may have to try it a couple times to get used to it, but it is really simple. Believe me, just simply swipe up just a bit to bring up your dock, and then once again, press and hold, bring it out, and then move it to the right. And there we go. We're now running two apps at once. Super easy right from the dock. The other way to multitask on the iPad is through slide over. So let's say here I have a music app open, and I found a song I want to listen to. What I can do is tap on that same three-dot menu, but this time we're going to tap on slide over to prompt us to bring a second application to multitask with. And in this case here, I'm going to bring up a Pages document. And as you can see, just like before, we're running two apps at once, but this time the arrangement is a little bit different. So as opposed to having one app run side by side the other, we now have one app run over the other. So you can see the music app here in the smaller window is actually running over top the Pages document. And this allows for me to give the full screen space to the Pages document, essentially prioritize that, but then still have an almost iPhone-sized view of that second application, allowing me to quickly, say, change a song while I'm typing out my essay here, or my video script in this case. And what is also neat is if I take this three-dot menu, I can also tap and drag it off to the right of the display to quickly dismiss that app, and again, focus on that main app. But then whenever I want it back, simply drag from the right to bring it back. And this also works here on the other side of the display. So I think this really is great, particularly for the music app, as that's something you're going to need maybe for a second or two just to change your song, and then you don't need it anymore and dismiss it and then go back to work. So this here I think is really great if you want to focus on one app and have easy access to a second while you work. And again, to close, simply bring the app into view, tap on that same three-dot menu, and then we're going to tap on close, and that's then going to open or close the slide over app. And this brings us to the home screen, where I want to show you a few neat tricks as well. First, of course, to move an application, you probably already know this. You just want to press and hold and then drag it around the display. And that's going to allow you to freely move the application, and then move it here along the side. Simply hold it to the right here to bring it over to a second page. The same thing works with widgets, so we can go ahead and tap and hold and then drag those around as well. Now, what is neat specifically about widgets is you can actually create what's called a widget stack. So for example here, let's say I have my battery widget and I have my home temperature widget. I want to go ahead and drag one over the other. That's going to combine it into one widget, allowing us to cycle between them. You see we have two little dots here on the right, indicating that there's two widgets in the stack, and we now have this really useful stack. So this allows us to have two widgets essentially in one. You can see that frees up some screen space, so it allows me to have more widgets on my screen at a given time. And I can go ahead and tap on that and also enable or disable what's called Smart Rotate, and that's essentially going to show you which widget it thinks you're going to use most at a specific time of day. You can go ahead and turn that on. You also have some suggestions for more widgets to add. If we go ahead and tap done here, as you can see, they will then freeze in place like normal, and you can simply swipe between them at will, giving you again a more efficient way to store widgets on your home screen. And if you want to modify this, we're going to press and hold, tap on edit stack, and we can go ahead and remove a widget from the stack, or simply drag it out to undo what we just did. There's a really neat hidden feature on the home screen that I want to show you. Check this out. If I go ahead and swipe up from the bottom left, it's going to take a screenshot. Go ahead and tap done for now. And then if I swipe from the bottom right, it's going to open up a blank notes document. These are really great, useful shortcuts to have, and I'll show you how to set these up now. So to do this, we're going to jump into your settings application here. And from that, we're going to go to the multitasking menu, multitasking and gestures, tap on that. And then if we scroll down, we have here at the bottom of the page, we have the option to turn on or off swipe finger from corner. So you want to make sure that that is turned on. And then secondly, we can go ahead and assign functions to each corner. Now, in this case, it only gives you the option between a screenshot and a quick note, both great functions, but I would love to see Apple add more in the future. But having this enabled, as you can see, gives you that ability to quickly take a screenshot as opposed to having to press the buttons here on the top. Much more efficient, but more on screenshots in a sec. There's a couple tips and tricks with that as well. But first, we're jumping into Safari, and there's a few things that I really want to show you. And first is to change the view of the tab bar in Safari. You can see here I have a very compact view, which sort of aligns the tabs next to each other alongside the URL bar, giving you more screen space for the content that you're actually viewing. Now, this is not on by default, but I highly recommend you change it. And to do this, we're going to jump into Settings, and then we are going to scroll down to where we find Safari. There it is. And then scroll to where we find tabs. And by default, it's going to be on this separate tab bar. And you can see here that this creates a much bigger tab view. It takes up more screen space, where I much prefer the compact tab bar. You can see giving you much more screen space. The color even sort of matches the backdrop of the website and makes it much nicer to browse and also to cycle between your open tabs. So I highly recommend you change it to the compact view. Speaking of tabs, to see all your open tabs, you can tap this button here on the top right. Alternatively, you can also just simply pinch outwards. And as you can see, you got to do sort of a big pinch out, and that's then going to give you all of your open apps and open tabs. And to close the tab, you can simply press on the X here. You can also swipe to the left to also close that tab more quickly. Now, earlier we looked at multitasking, running two apps at once, but you can actually also run two instances of the same app at once. So let's say here I'm in Safari, I tap on that same three-dot menu, and this time here we're going to tap on split view, just like before, but I can actually tap on Safari once more, and as you can see, that's going to open up a second Safari window right here, and now we're running two windows, so I can have an article on one side, and say a YouTube video or I don't know, something like that on the other, and it allows you to have two tabs, or essentially two windows, running side by side. And by the way, this doesn't just work in Safari, it also works in many applications as well. Not all, but most applications I find do have the ability to run two instances of the same app at once. This one is really cool. Let's say you often visit a website, but they don't have an application, so you always go back to the same website in Safari. Of course, you can use bookmarks and things like that, but a much quicker way, or I think a nicer way to store that, is you can actually store a website on your homepage. So let me go ahead and show you how to do that. So let's say here I have Google Flights open. I go ahead and tap on the share menu in the top right, and then we're going to scroll down to where we find add to home screen. Go ahead and press the little plus sign here. Here we have the ability to rename the website. I can also see the icon that it's going to give you. We'll go ahead and tap on add here. And now, as you can see, if we go home, we have the Google Flights app/website right here. This is actually just a website, not an application, but it is presented as such. And every time we tap it, it's going to open up a new instance of that website. So you can imagine here saying having on your home screen multiple websites that you often visit. Again, preferably, or I think it's ideal really for websites that don't have a good app or don't have an app for the iPad. And this here allows you to tap it and then quickly access that website from one tap right from the home screen. Now I want to go back to the control center. You probably recall that we looked at this earlier. There's a few settings here that I highly recommend you look into when setting up your control center. So to do this, we're going to jump into the settings app here. And then we're going to scroll to where we find Control Center. There it is. And the first option here is pretty important, and that is to allow or disallow Control Center within app. So let's say here I'm currently in another application. Do I want to allow my Control Center to be accessed or not? And I think for most people, I recommend keeping this on. The only exception here would be perhaps, say, gamers. If you're constantly swiping from the corners of your screen, you don't want your screen to be interrupted with your Control Center, in which case you can opt to turn this off. I suggest you turn this on. And then beneath that here, we have the option, or rather the section to determine what you want included in your control center. So you can see here, these are all the included controls that I have here. We can go ahead and rearrange them as well by pressing holding this little three-line menu here. I can also remove one. So let's say the torch, I want to remove that. And then beneath here, we have all the additional controls that we can add. So if I want to add the torch again, simply press the little plus sign, and then we'll go ahead and find that back in the control center. So really with this, I recommend you go through all the controls that you have at the moment and see whether you actually use them or need them, and remove any that you don't need, as this is going to help declutter your control center, making it easier to find what you need. Now I want to circle back to screenshots. So once again, to take a screenshot, you can of course press the sleep wake button and the volume up button. Clicking them both at the same time will take a screenshot. But again, a nicer, faster way to do so is simply swipe from the bottom left, as we've set up earlier in the video. Now from here, we can actually also annotate the screenshot. And a lot of people think this only applies to the Apple Pencil, but you don't actually need an Apple Pencil for this. We'll have more tips and tricks for the Apple Pencil specifically later on. But for now, let's just focus on using our fingers to annotate this home screen. You can see the same, or the screenshot. You can see the same menu applies here, and I can go ahead and draw just with my finger right onto anything to highlight. Let's say I'm helping someone locate something or anything like that, or let's say I'm in an article, I want to highlight a line or something, I can do that too. What is also neat is if, say, you're drawing shapes like I just did, you can see they don't look so great. So what I can do is draw a shape roughly, tap and hold, and as you can see, that's then going to turn it into a much neater shape. And this also works here with triangles. There we go. And even with something like a line. You see, it makes it much neater to make your annotations look a little bit cleaner and more professional. And then lastly, let's say I take a screenshot and I only want to focus on a specific part. I can also crop it by simply dragging in the sides here of the screenshot, allowing me to crop it and really bring down and narrow down what the screenshot focuses on here. I can move the tools out for a sec and then bring that out. And then there we go. We have a screenshot that really focuses on what we want. Tap on done, and that's then going to save in your photo. Now this next section is really important as I want to show you the top battery saving tips and tricks as well as settings to change to help maximize your iPad's battery life. And the first here has to do with Siri. Now Siri is of course really useful to ask a quick question to, check the weather, create a calendar event for example, but how you use Siri really matters. So let's jump into settings here and fine tune Siri to make sure it's running properly. So if we go here into the settings app here, we're going to scroll to where we find Siri and search. Now by default, the first setting here called listen for will be turned on. It'll either be for the first option or the second one. I'm not going to say them. I don't want to trigger your Siris, but it'll be on either one of these options. My recommendation is to turn this off. Now, having it on either of these settings means that your iPad is going to be constantly listening to either of these activation phrases, so the microphones will be running, and that will be using a lot of battery in the background. Of course, the benefit to this is that it allows you to access Siri hands-free, right? You don't have to press anything, but at the same time, it takes a lot of battery, and in my opinion, can also be accidentally triggered. For example, if I say seriously slow enough, I find it often does trigger the digital assistant, which can be a little bit inconvenient, especially say during a meeting. So turning off listen for will make sure that that cannot happen. So I suggest you keep this off. But how do we then activate Siri? Well, that's where we come to the second option, which is called press top button for Siri. So if we go ahead and turn that on, we go ahead and tap on the power button, the sleep wake button, press and hold it. And as you can see, Siri will then come up here on the bottom right. I can say, what's the weather for tomorrow? And there we go. And then we can simply press it again to dismiss Siri. So this works really well. Again, even on the home screen, press and hold, it'll bring up Siri, press it again to dismiss. Works really well. You don't have any accidental triggers. And most importantly, turning off that always on listening for the trigger phrase will save you a lot of battery. The next battery saving setting has to do with your notifications. So let's jump into the settings app here and we're going to scroll to where we find notifications, and over here you'll find a list of all of your applications. Chances are most if not all of them will want to send you notifications, but what I recommend you do is audit this essentially. Go through every single application that you have on your iPad, tap on it, and then we can go ahead and turn on or off notifications. We can also fine tune this. So let's say here, Apple Watch keyboard. No, let's do a different one. Calendar. Calendar is great. You can see here by default, I do allow notifications for that, but I can also opt for how those notifications behave. So for example, do I want them on my lock screen? Do I want them to play sounds? Do I want them to only show time sensitive notifications, right? All these things you can modify to make sure you're not being bombarded with notifications. As of course, whenever your notification comes in, your iPad, the speaker will play, that takes a bit of battery, and mostly your screen will turn on, and that too really adds up. If you're getting dozens, if not over 100 notifications per day, this can really add up and contribute to using a lot of battery life. Not to mention that no one likes being disrupted by notifications that don't matter, so for your mental health, it is great too. So my suggestion really would be to turn off for things like shopping applications or games and only allow like certain important messaging applications or say finance applications, perhaps a home utility application, right? Things that when your iPad goes off, you know it's something important and something worth checking, as opposed to some shopping app reminding you that you have items in your basket. And that brings us from notifications over to background app refresh, to which I take a similar approach. So to do this, we're going to jump into general, and then we're going to tap on background app refresh. And just like notifications, most, if not all applications are going to want to run in the background, but many really don't need to. Now, you do have the option here at the top to turn it off for all applications. This is something I don't recommend, as there are certain applications that you may want to actually run in the background. For example, things like mail applications, certain photo editing applications, like for myself, as well as things like my Netflix or my music. I don't want that to reset every time or often when I go home. So those I keep on, but other applications I turn off. A lot of games I turn off. Certain utility apps I don't use. Shopping apps again, I just turn these off, as every app that's going to be running in the background will take up some battery life. So the more you turn off here, the more efficiently your iPad will run. And this brings us over to one of my favorite parts of the video, and that is the Apple Pencil section, where I want to show you some really neat tips and tricks specific here for the Apple Pencil. And I think the Apple Pencil here is a really powerful accessory that I use often on my iPad, whether it be to take notes or to edit photos, say in Lightroom. I think it really helps you do finer things more easily, even than, say, a mouse on a computer. It really gives you a precise control, and I think Apple here have done a great job with specifically the new Apple Pencil Pro. However, much of what I'll be showing you today will apply to all models, but I'll specify that as we go. So first, let's go ahead and open up a new free form sheet rather. If I go ahead and tap that, you'll see here that let's open up a blank document. There we go. This will allow us then to immediately start drawing right with the Apple Pencil. Now what I can do here is I can go ahead and tap on this little pen icon here, and as you can see, that's then going to bring up this menu here, and this is your pencil menu, allowing us to change tools. So I can go ahead and go from the highlighter, I can change over to a more thicker pen, and I can even tap on the tools specifically here to modify further. So I can change the opacity as well as the thickness of a line. Go ahead and change the color as well, so I can go ahead and mix and match colors. You'll see that kind of creates green, really cool as well. And then I get this little arrow here to undo. Simply tap that once to undo your last action. You can even bring in certain tools. So if I go ahead and swipe here to the right, you'll see we have a ruler here that's going to bring that up on screen. And for this, you kind of want to use your second hand with 2 fingers to position that around the display. And then I can take the Apple Pencil here, sort of draw alongside the ruler. And as you can see here, use a different tool. There we go. I can go ahead and draw alongside that here. There we go, to get a perfectly straight line. As you can see, go ahead and change the angle on that as well. And that will give us a really precise line using the ruler. And what is also neat, if you have an Apple Pencil, you can go ahead and double tap on the pencil. And as you can see, that's then automatically going to activate the eraser, allowing you to quickly erase things. And of course, you can tap on the eraser just like the other tools to make it bigger, to more quickly erase larger parts of what you've just drawn. And simply double tap again to bring it back to your last used tool. So at this stage, I want to show you a few features specific to the new Apple Pencil Pro. Now this here will only be for the new iPad Pro models, but for those that do have it, I want to show you these new features. And the first of which is the squeeze function. So if I go ahead and hold my pencil, just hover it over my screen here, I can go ahead and squeeze the pencil. And as you can see, that's going to bring up a more refined, smaller menu of the tool menu here that we saw earlier. And this will allow us to very quickly and easily see all of my tools and switch to color. And what is also neat here is I can go ahead and squeeze then to dismiss it. And then if let's say I'm over here on the screen, simply squeeze it again and bring it up. And what is neat here, as you can see, it will essentially follow your pencil. So wherever you're drawing, I can quickly pull it up without having to go further away from the screen. It just sort of follows and places wherever I go. So really nice squeeze function. You just want to squeeze sort of the lower third here of the pencil, give a little bit of haptic feedback, kind of feel it vibrate a bit so that you know that that squeeze function has activated. Something really cool also specifically with the new Apple Pencil Pro is you can see that we have this hover feature, which will sort of show you roughly where you will draw it when you place it down. You can see I'm not currently touching the screen, I'm just above it. But what's even cooler is if I rotate, you'll see that that line then rotates, the preview rather rotates with my finger thanks to a gyroscope. And this is really cool because it allows you to do things that's just not possible on other Apple Pencils. In other words, it's just a really great way to quickly change, say, for example, the thickness here of a stroke simply by rotating the pencil in your hand. Great feature. But if you're not drawing a work of art like I am here, the Apple Pencil is also great, for example, to annotate or sign a signature on a contract, say a PDF or something. And of course, it's also great for annotating those screenshots. And just like I said before, you don't need an Apple Pencil for this. But of course, the pencil gives you such added, really precise control that you just don't get with just your finger. And of course, having these features specifically on the Apple Pencil Pro does give you a lot of additional control. And there's something really fun about using it as well. What is also really cool is that you can actually write out in text fields with your Apple Pencil. So let's say here in Spotlight, I can go ahead and search for an app. I can go and type out, or write out rather, weather. And as you can see, even with my horrible handwriting, it recognized that. And then it's going to type out weather. We can go ahead and tap on that to open the application. So great again to quickly fill out those text fields right with your Apple Pencil. Speaking of great accessories to add to your iPad, let me show you how to pair a Bluetooth mouse as well as a Bluetooth keyboard right to your iPad. Now, of course, there are many keyboard accessories for the iPad out. Apple have even made one, but this is still a very expensive accessory. I think just using a traditional Bluetooth mouse and keyboard is a great way to get a lot of that functionality for a really low price. So first, let me show you how to pair a keyboard. Now, in this case here, I have Apple's Magic Keyboard. However, it doesn't have to be a keyboard from Apple. It can be any Bluetooth keyboard. First thing you're going to want to do is turn your keyboard on. So in this case here, I'm going to flip the switch here on the back to the right and make sure your keyboard is on and also in pairing mode. Then over on the iPad, we're going to tap on Settings and then go to where we find Bluetooth. And then here under Other Devices, you should locate that keyboard. So in this case here, I have Dion's Magic Keyboard Studio. That's going to be this keyboard here. And as you can see, the keyboard will now be paired. And what is really neat is that I can immediately start using it. So let's say here, I pull up a notes document here, and let's create a new document here. And I am now typing on the iPad with my keyboard. Boom, there we go. And special characters, of course, work as well. Certain shortcuts also will work, which I think is really great. So I can go and adjust the volume. As you can see, I can even adjust the brightness, which is really useful. And other keyboard shortcuts also work. So for example, I can use, here, I can show you here, Command Tab. If I go ahead and press and hold that, you'll see it allows me to quickly cycle and switch between the open applications on my iPad. This is a really great feature, something I really enjoy using on my Mac and also works really well on the iPad. Other keyboard shortcuts, for example, here, I can also use Command C to copy and then V here to paste as well. And then one more keyboard shortcut that I want to show you as a quick way to access Spotlight is to simply press Command Space. As you can see here, that's then going to bring up the Spotlight and allow me to search for anything on my iPad and then open that right from the keyboard as well. And then from the keyboard, let's take a quick look at the mouse as well. So here I have the Logitech MX Master 3, one of my all-time favorite mice for both my computer, as my Mac, as well as my iPad. So really enjoy using this. And just like with the keyboard, you want to make sure that your mouse is on and that it is in pairing mode. So in my case here, what we go ahead and do is press and hold on the pairing button here. You'll see it then starts to blink. And then what we can do is open up the settings app. Again, in Bluetooth, we'll wait for the other devices to show. And there it is, MX Master 3. So we'll go ahead and tap on that, wait for that to connect, tap on pair, there we go, and connect it. And as you can see, we now have a mouse working on the iPad. You can see the cursor here is going to be this little sort of opaque ball. And what is really cool is as I swipe around here, you see that certain elements do interact with that touch. So if I hover over this widget here, you see it gets a little bit larger. This makes it just a little bit easier to sort of know what it is that you are selecting. And of course, other functions like, for example, the scroll here, they do work just fine. Go in and scroll just like before, and to go home, simply press and click and hold on the home bar here to swipe back home, and I can go ahead and just interact with my iPad like I normally would. And then when you pair this, we have the mouse here on one side, bring in the keyboard once more, and it almost feels like a mini little desktop, and honestly feels really like a proper computer just in some ways. You know, it just allows you to really naturally and quickly interact with your iPad and get a lot done. So again, I'm switching between apps, I'm using the cursor here, all from my iPad with my Bluetooth mouse and my Bluetooth keyboard. Next, I want to show you how to control your iPad using your Mac. Now, this is super easy to set up. In fact, all you need to do is power up your laptop or your MacBook and have it close to your iPad and simply place the two next to each other. And over on the MacBook here, if I take my cursor and swipe all the way to the left of the screen and sort of keep swiping, you'll see it eventually pushes over quite literally to the iPad. Super cool. And as you can see here, using the touchpad here on my MacBook Air, I'm now completely controlling my iPad, scrolling, everything works. And this here is super useful. You can imagine, for example, say having your iPad on a dock set up to your, on your desk next to your computer. Let's say I'm using my computer and I want to quickly control my iPad. I don't have to lean forward and use my fingers to touch the display. No, I can just use the touchpad right from my MacBook to quickly control my iPad. So super useful way to multitask and really use both devices here with one touchpad. And to bring it back over to the computer, simply take the cursor, bring it to the right edge of the iPad, and push it back. And as you can see, just like that, oh, let me try that one more time. There we go. Just like that, I'm controlling my Mac once more. And now we can go ahead and take this even further and actually use the iPad as a proper second display for the MacBook here. So to set this up, we're going to go into the settings app on your Mac. So tap on the Apple logo in the top left, and then we're going to tap on System Settings. And then from there, we're going to scroll to where we find Displays. And then here we should have the iPad located. So what we're going to do is press on the iPad here, and then under Use As, instead of doing linked keyboard and mouse, we're going to click on Extended or Mirrored Display. Give it a second to load here, and as you can see, we now have the wallpaper from my MacBook running on my iPad. You can see we have the two side by side, and I can go ahead and quite literally click and drag any window I want over to my iPad. So as you can see here, I now properly have a second display right on my iPad from my MacBook. This is super useful. Let's say I'm editing a video here on the main display and I want to have a show or something like that running in the background. I can quickly assign and switch windows seamlessly here between the iPad and my Mac. And you can see the latency here is really great as this is all wireless and working over Wi-Fi. So I think the iPad here can really function as a great secondary display that is so portable to take with you on the go. And then when I want to stop mirroring the display, or sharing the display rather, from my MacBook to my iPad, I can go ahead and tap on the mirroring menu here in the menu bar and then simply click on the iPad once, and that's then going to lock the iPad and stop mirroring the display from my MacBook. And now I want to show you some settings to help increase the security of your iPad. This is super important. So to do this, we're going to jump first into settings here, and then we're going to tap on Face ID as well as passcode. This may be Touch ID and passcode, depending on which model iPad you have. Go ahead and type in your passcode, and then from there we have the ability to first decide what we want Face ID or Touch ID to be able to accomplish. And my suggestion is to turn all these on. I find both Touch ID and Face ID to be really secure forms of biometric authentication, so I highly recommend you turn these on. Now secondly, I recommend you set up an alternative appearance if your iPad has Face ID. I find sometimes Face ID can struggle a little bit. If, say, gentlemen, if you have a beard and you shave it one day, even with certain sunglasses, or ladies, if you change your hairstyle, it can impact the effectiveness of Face ID. So setting up an alternative appearance with that different appearance can make it more effective and definitely work more instances at a time. So definitely something I suggest you set up. And beneath that, something I highly recommend you turn on is called require attention for Face ID. Now this is going to require you not just to look into the direction of Face ID to unlock your iPad, but also going to require you to actually make eye contact with your iPad. So it's just an additional layer of security that I highly recommend, so definitely suggest you turn that on. And then beneath that, probably the most important security setting of this entire video will have to be this portion right here, and that is called allow access when locked. Now, too many people I see have all of these on, or most of them on, and that basically means that when your iPad is locked, someone can access your control center, go through your notifications, respond to messages, reply to a call, things like that. And ideally, you shouldn't have access to any of that so long as your iPad is locked, right? What if, say, it is lost or stolen? You wouldn't want that person to be able to go through any of your data. So with that in mind, I highly recommend you turn most, if not all, of these off. So for example, your control center, your notifications, you wouldn't want someone to be able to access information. The only ones that I do keep on rather are the lock screen widgets. That's going to be your weather, for example, as well as your live activities. If you have an Apple Watch, you can show your activity ring progress. These two I think are quite safe to have on, so these I definitely keep on as well. Now beneath that, we have an interesting option that is called erase data. Now this is something that I personally recommend to most people, but not for all. So first, what this essentially does is, if say you type in your passcode incorrectly 10 times in a row, what that's going to result in is it's going to result in your iPad completely erasing itself. This means that if your iPad is lost or stolen and no longer safe, your data at least will be, and that is ultimately what is most important. So for that reason, this is something I use both on my iPad as well as on my iPhone, and something I definitely recommend to you too. However, the one exception I will say is if, say, you are a parent who may have a child trying to enter their iPad, you may want to not use this, as it will result in your iPad, of course, erasing itself, and you wouldn't want this to be triggered, by a family member, friend, or a child, like I say as well. So if you have concerns in that area, or perhaps even yourself, if you think you're prone to forgetting your passcode, maybe don't use this. But otherwise, I do recommend this because, again, when your iPad, if rather your iPad is lost or stolen, your data is ultimately what's most important, and this feature here will protect that. So there you have it. Those are the top 25 settings, features, and settings to change on your iPad to help unlock new features and improve its performance, make it more secure, and add more functionality. Thank you so much for watching this long video. If you made it to the end, please let me know in the comments. I really appreciate your support. Be sure to leave a like if this video helped you out, and also subscribe to see more videos like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching. By the way, I have made a similar video specifically for the iPhone to help unlock this device's full potential, which I'll leave linked on screen right now if you want to check that out. Thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.